Chapter 18, the beginning of the Great Depression. Shirley was a flapper from the 1920s. The 1920s was a time of prosperity. Martha, on the other hand, is a product of the Great Depression. The Great Depression is a time when people lost jobs, didn't have food, didn't have housing. Causes of the Great Depression. Move this a little bit. There we go. The election of 1928, Herbert Hoover was elected president. The economy was doing well. The stock market was good. It was a bull market, which means the stock market is continuing to increase and increase and increase. However, people were using borrowed money. It's called buying on margin. And when the stock market began to fall, their loans or margins were called in. Today, a loan cannot be called in if you're paying your monthly payments. But back in the day, they did not have those types of contracts. A broker could issue a margin call demanding the investor repay the loan money at once. What do you think would happen if you were asked to pay off the loan at once? You probably could not. People were speculating and assuming that the stock market would continue to climb and taking out more margin loans than ever. And then people sensed a change, and all of a sudden they started pulling their money out. Prices began to fall. People began to sell their stocks to pay for the interest on their loans. Prices fell further. On October 21st of 1929, the stock market really fell, and people began to panic. October 29th, Black Tuesday, the stock market crashed, losing $10 to $15 billion in one day. They say that part of it was due to overproduction. We were producing too many goods and people weren't buying them, which caused a recession, which means a lot of people were unemployed. People could not buy anything with an installment plan at this time because no credit was available. Banks began to lose money, and back in the day, bank runs took place. People ran to the banks to take their money out before they lost it. 10% of banks closed by 1932. The economy runs on consumer spending and business investment. If that's not happening, we have a problem. Our next president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, will declare a bank holiday, which is a nice way of saying we're shutting down the banks to try to make them stronger. The economy goes into recession. Lots and lots of unemployment, unequal distribution of income, high tariffs, which is tax on imported goods. The Federal Reserve Bank, which is the Bank of the United States, should have raised interest rates to stop this, but they did not. Brother, Can You Spare a Dime becomes a popular song at the time. Here are some of the lyrics. They used to tell me I was building a dream, and so I followed the mob. When there was earth to plow or guns to bear, I was always there. But now I don't have anything. The SEC was created, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to now regulate the stock market, so this would never happen again. Life during the Great Depression was very hard. People were without jobs, they went hungry, or they stood in bread lines and at soup kitchens, like at the YMCA, the Salvation Army. People blamed the president. People were homeless. They were getting thrown out of their houses. A Hoover flag was a pocket turned out with no money. People became hobos. They would jump on a train, riding the rails, looking for work, going from city to city. African Americans had the highest unemployment rate due to racism at 50%. Last hired, first fired. The Great Migration during World War I was causing many African Americans in the North to be poor due to lack of jobs. President Roosevelt will create the New Deal, but this will come a little later. A drought also hits the middle of our country, the Great Plains, and farmers are unable to grow crops. Big dust storms blacken the sky. Movies were popular at this time. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was a famous show. King Kong, Walt Disney, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. Soap operas were on the radio, like The Guiding Light. Soap operas were called soap operas due to the sponsors being laundry soap companies. And different types of books were written. John Steinbeck writes The Grapes of Wrath about the Dust Bowl. William Faulkner shows characters thinking and feeling before they speak. Photographers were also hired. Dorothea Lange and Margaret Bourke-White started taking pictures of what was going on. Paintings were also created. The painting on the left is one of the most famous paintings probably in our country, and it's been redone so many times. Hoover does respond. He organizes a series of conferences to discuss the issues. He increases public works spending, hoping to create jobs, but it does not. It's kind of like putting Band-Aid on an area where you really need stitches. Hoover opposed direct federal relief. He didn't think the federal government should give out any money, only state and local governments. He did start the RFC, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, to make loans to businesses available, but no one could get a loan because they didn't have any credit. They did try to rescue the banks. They set up the National Credit Corporation, but no one could afford to take out a loan. President Hoover did not meet the demands of the failing economy. Banks foreclosed on farms, and farmers lost their land. 1 million farms were lost. Hoover opposed using federal money to feed people, so charities did feed people. The Emergency Relief and Construction Act was created, and it did give small loans to state governments, but only some governments took the loans, and not many jobs were created. Hunger marches happened. People were demanding bread. Farmers were demanding their land back. The World War I veterans were promised a bonus for fighting in World War I, but it wasn't supposed to be given out until 1945. The bonus marchers wanted their money now. General MacArthur forced the veterans out of D.C. and burned their tent city. Hoover did not order this, but it appeared as if he did. And unfortunately, when he's running for re-election, this will be a negative event against him. Monopoly was created during the Great Depression to give people a sense of having money and property. And so the beginning of the Great Depression was a very hard time for America.